now we're going to take the back sloper measurements you need to create your back sloper. So using my handy dandy Mood retractable measuring device, we are going to take our across back measurement, a pretty wide point. We're going to take your back bust. So where you took your bust measurement in the front along your apex, you're going to take it along your back as well. Same point from side seam to side seam. Then you're going to take your back waist measurement from side seam to side seam. Then you're going to take your high point shoulder, which is where your neck meets your shoulder, your waist. You're going to take your center back length, back of your neck there, vertebrae, whatever, I'm not a scientist, sorry. And then you're going to take your shoulder length, which is from that high point shoulder to your shoulder ridge or your low point shoulder here. And then you're going to take your side seam length, which is right from under your armpit to your waist. So when you're taking these measurements, you can wear like a tight fitting camisole and put tape if you like in all of those places where you'll be taking those measurements. And it's definitely a really good help if someone can take them for you so they're as accurate as possible. And you should like look in the mirror while it's going on, and then you jot those down. Make sure to keep all the fractions, like if it comes to like 16.5 or 16 3/8, don't round up or down, just keep it as accurate as possible. So that's it. Those are the measurements you need for your back sloper. You've already created your front bodice sloper, and now we're going to create our back bodice sloper. So using the measurements that you've taken, you're going to plot those out on the paper to create your back bodice sloper pattern. A sloper and a pattern are different. A pattern is usually on paper, and a sloper is usually on oak tag. So we're going to make this pattern, which you can transfer to muslin. Then you can cut and sew one front on the fold and two back pieces, and you can make all your fit adjustments to that muslin. Then you can make those changes to your pattern, and then ultimately transfer your pattern with corrections to oak tag. Oak tag is like similar to like those filing envelopes that you use at work. It's just like a harder type of paper, and once you transfer it to oak tag, you can reuse that sloper over and over again. So we're going to start the back bodice sloper, and I'm going to use a marker just so it's more visual for you guys. So we're going to start with line AB, and that is step 1. We're going to use your high point shoulder to your waist measurement, and that's going to be the first line. It's also going to be considered your center back. Step 2, from point A, we're going to create line AC using the shoulder length measurement plus 1/2 inch. To create line AC. Step 3, from point C, we're going to drop 2 inches to create line CD. I'm using measurements for myself, so I'm doing about a size 2. If you're doing a size 4, I would go up another 1/8 of an inch, size 6, another 1/4 of an inch, and so on. Step 4, we'll use your shoulder length plus 1/2 inch. We're going to create line DE, similar to the front of our sloper, but we're going to add 1/2 inch. So again, you're going to draw a diagonal line from point D. That's going to end on line AC, which is your shoulder length measurement plus 1/2 inch. We're going to be adding a shoulder dart, so that's why we're adding that 1/2 inch now. Step 5, from point B, we're going to create point F, and we're going to use your center back measurement to plot that point F on line AB. So you start down from the waist, measure up your center back measurement, and mark that as point F. So for step 6, we're going to square 1/2 inch out from point F. If you can't tell already, we're going to create our back neckline. So for step 7, we're going to be joining point F to point E using the hip curve. So step 8, we're going to create point G. Point G is going to be the midpoint of point F and B, but we're going to drop it an additional 1.25 inches. So this is my point G. For step 9, we're going to go from point G to create line GH. using half of your back bust measurement plus half an inch. Pull across to create line GH. Step 10 is going to be point I, which is the midpoint of line FG. For step 11, from point I, we're going to create line IJ using a cross back measurement minus half an inch. This line, IJ, is going to become the curve for our armhole. For step 12, from point G, we're going to create point K using half of our cross back measurement. So it's going to fall on this line GH, create point K. For step 13, from point K, we're going to draw a diagonal line that's half an inch long to create point L. Using your hip curve, we're going to connect points D, J, L, and H to create that armhole. The closer you get to H, you're going to want to make sure that that's about like a 1/4 inch squared, because you'll be sewing this to your front, and you want those two pieces to line up perfectly. So I definitely recommend you using a pencil and eraser so you can fix whatever marks you make that might be a little off center, or like this I definitely think should be a little bit more curved. For step 15, from point B, using half of the back waist measurement plus 1 inch and 3/4, we're going to create line BM. Pull this straight across. That will become our point M. For step 16, we're going to create point N, which is the midpoint of line GK. That's a really important mark right there. It's going to become the vanishing point for our dart, and it's going to become our princess line. You could even divide these two pieces into center back pattern and side back pattern. Step 17, we're going to measure line GN, and we're going to subtract 3/4 of an inch to create point O, which is your first dart leg, and it's going to be closest to point B. So you're going to measure GN, you're going to subtract 3/4 of an inch, and then you're going to create point O. Step 18, we're going to create point P, which is 1.5 inches away from O. Again, as the sizes increase, you can increase that measurement by 1/8, but always be sure to maintain that from B to O plus P to M is half of your back waist measurement. Step 19, we're going to join point H to point M for our side length. This one's a little tricky because you want to be sure that your side length is the full length of the measurement that you've taken. Again, when you're taking your measurements, maybe you want to wear like a tight camisole or a tight t-shirt and put tape on all the points where you'll be taking your measurements. And I definitely recommend having someone help you take your measurements so they're completely accurate. So again, my side length is not completely perfect, so I'm going to make that extension so that it's the correct full length for my side length. So step 20, we'll be creating the dart legs by connecting point P to N and N to O. For step 21, we're going to find the midpoint of the shoulder length line. We're going to extend that point 1/2 of an inch up, and that is going to become the center line for our shoulder dart. Step 22, we're going to create the shoulder dart. So we're going to connect our midpoint to point N, and on either side of our midpoint by 1/4 of an inch, we're going to place a mark. So now we're going to raise those marks to be 1/4 of an inch high, and those will become our dart legs. We're going to create the vanishing point for the dart. You're You're going to take your ruler and from your midpoint at the shoulder, you're going to mark down 3 inches so you have your vanishing point for your dart. For step 23, you're going to join that vanishing point to either dart leg on the shoulder dart. Now that we have our dart legs for our shoulder dart and we have our extension for our full side length, we need to blend our point M into point P. We also have to blend the new rise for our dart legs into our original point D and point E. For blending our new waistline, I'm going to use the hip curve, and I'm going to do my best not to go past point P because we don't want to interfere with the dart leg. So traditionally speaking with pattern making, when you've got old lines, you can just put a slash through them so you don't get confused. Same with this. And then we're going to add our seam allowance. So unlike our front bodice sloper where we were cutting on the fold, this we're going to cut 2 of so that we have 2 back pieces and a center back seam. So we're going to add 1 inch to center back. Remember to square your pattern off. We're going to add a 1/2 inch to the neckline. Be sure to curve your ruler. Send that over your shoulder, past your shoulder, over your shoulder. Extending these corners. Then we're going to do an inch seam allowance on our shoulder. Just rotate the ruler, the dart. Whenever you have a dart, you definitely want to extend the dart legs so that when you're sewing them, you can notch them. You need those dart legs extended into the seam allowance so there's no confusion when you're sewing. All right, so now for my armhole, and notice how like where this is straight, I'm bringing this ruler straight through. You don't want to curve anything or adjust from your seam lines because these are your sewing lines. So your seam allowance has to dictate that like perfectly. Okay, I forgot to square this. And we're doing 1/2 inch at the armhole. One inch at the side seam. And again, it's totally at your discretion. If you want to do 1/2 inch or 1 inch at your waist seam. You can always change this later on back to a 1/2 inch after you've done your fit sample and become a little bit more familiar with all of the points of your sloper. I'm extending my dart legs. I'm also going to draw in my center point of this waist dart so that I can perfectly add my seam allowance. I'm going to go another inch past that, and I'm going to blend my waist seam allowance into that. Give it a little rotation there. Pivot the ruler on that 1 inch. Square off your corners. And now you have your back bodice sloper. Again, like with the front, you can always put in like your name, your size, how many to cut. If you're doing a lining and a self fabric, you can write in like cut to self, cut to lining. Another beautiful thing about this sloper is that if you wanted to divide it into either like just having a princess seam, you can cut these two pieces apart and make new pattern pieces. You can manipulate this line to be wavy or something, and then you cut along that wave, add the seam allowances back, and then you've got like some really creative style lines and stuff. But the step after having placed this on paper is to cut it in muslin, try it on yourself, whatever adjustments you make to the muslin, then you would make to this pattern before transferring it to oak tag, before cutting it in your final fabric. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Again, I probably should have put back sloper, but this is a doozy, this one. Good luck, and I can't wait to see what you guys come up with. If there's any questions, leave them in the comment section below, and good luck making your first front and back sloper.